Hey guys, I'm Chris Brady from chrisbrady.com, and today I want to talk to you about ADHD in women. If you follow my Facebook page, I posted an article a few days ago about the clinical trials where historically women have not been represented. And because of that, our current dosage and the types of meds that we receive as women um, are very much not the right dosage for our body types. And the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, from which we get diagnosed for ADHD or autism or anxiety or depression, or any type of mood disorder, those are symptoms that go along with how a male would present. Because males have been studied and women historically have not been. And so because we're not adequately represented in these clinical trials, this is obviously a real difficulty when we're dealing with medication, when we are trying to get a diagnosis of something. So I just wanted to talk really briefly about ADHD in women. This is such a huge topic in my domain. Over the last, nearly 20 years that I've been working in this field, I've had so many little girls and women be misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all because the symptoms come across and present themselves so differently. And so we really need clinicians to be aware of those differences, and parents need to be aware. So, one of the main things is, we tend to think of ADHD as something that little hyper boys have. It's just this kind of stereotype that we have, this assumption that we've created just based on the symptoms that we think present as children. And so what we want to talk about today is how that can be a little bit different for girls. And what we're really looking for. So we know that neurological differences such as ADHD or autism or dyslexia are highly hereditary. So if your child has been diagnosed with ADHD, you might be starting to see some of those similarities between your behaviors and some of the difficulties you've experienced in your life and what your kiddo is going through. And most often, these are the women that I get to work with. And they come in and say, okay, my kid's been diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm really seeing that there's a lot of similarities. And I'm also noticing that when I was a kid, I had all of these same struggles. And I just want to know if maybe that's why I've struggled so much too, right? So it's imperative to know this information for yourself. Why? Because we go through this lovely experience of blaming ourselves, not thinking that we are enough, not being told the right information about why we're struggling in certain areas. And so we blame and we blame and we blame and we internalize this inner dialogue that creates eventually shame. And we start to hide. We start to hide massive parts of ourselves. And this can get really ugly, especially in the work environment. I've had a lot of women and men who don't understand why they're struggling so much, but are definitely struggling in certain areas at work, especially if they have like an office job or something that's a little more mundane and, 9 to 5-ish. And they're seeing some of these struggles and they're starting to make some mistakes that they then have to cover up, or they have different behaviors that they're constantly feeling like they need to compensate for or apologize for, or sometimes just not even be present because they just don't want to make those mistakes anymore. And so this is where it's obviously so important to figure out what type of neurology you have, because the more you know, the better you're able to learn and grow and produce and reach the potential and the success that you feel is successful. It's just the same as if your child doesn't know that the reason they're struggling is, because their neurology is different and requires a different teaching method, then they're never really going to understand that. And they're going to constantly grow up with thinking that, all of the things that, adults will say. Why are you so lazy? You never reach your potential. Why do I constantly have to repeat myself? For women, it's, mostly it's those, but they also get that they're a tomboy because, they like sports and they like to be active because they have that hyperactivity. So they're not an athlete, they're a tomboy. They're also considered flighty or spacey or flaky. They're the daydreamers, right? They're looking out the window because they're distracted, but they're not, the teacher isn't seeing it as a distraction. They're seeing it as they're just daydreaming all the time and they just lose focus all the time, but they don't see that as what it actually is. And so these little girls, grow up to be the women that don't get diagnosed and struggle for many, many years, even decades, before they finally understand that their neurological difference is why they've struggled. The reason is, really not to do with them, but the way that they were taught, and that they were never actually taught how to learn in the way that they learn. So obviously this is going to develop low self-esteem, anxiety and or depression. And often when women go in to talk about these difficulties, that is what they're misdiagnosed with. A mood disorder, anxiety and or depression. And, when their kids then are later diagnosed with ADHD, because we're seeing, better diagnostic criteria, better tools that are available to teachers. And so we start to see a growth in these numbers. When their kid gets that diagnosis and they think, okay, maybe this is me too, it starts to, the pieces really start to come together and they can start to find a reason why. That it's not all of them, that they shouldn't have been blaming themselves all of these years. And this is obviously a difficult process as well, because this inner dialogue has been with them for many, many years. And so it's hard to come away from that inner dialogue once they've kind of been seeping in it for so long. And so we want to make sure that parents are aware of this, that, when little girls are constantly trying to be the people pleasers, they're constantly, they're working more at their homework. They're taking far longer than they should on something that seems like, something that they're very, these are very intellectual children. And so you kind of like, there's a disconnect between their intellect that I can see and, is very blatant in other subject areas, and how they're actually able to perform right now with homework or right now in this specific subject area, right? Or how they're able to focus when they're asked to. And so it's these types of differences that we want to really keep an eye out for and not make excuses for, not tell the girl or the woman, that they're just a people pleaser, or they just need to work harder in order to get there. If there's a difficulty there, they shouldn't need to double their hours in homework. They shouldn't need to stay late every single night after work in order to get that work done, because there's strategies that are available to them that they can be using now and go to work go home at the same time as everyone else. They just need different strategies. So I want to talk about this because obviously this is it's a personal topic, and it's a very sensitive topic for many adults. Difficulties with relationships can come about because of this, difficulties at work, difficulties with holding a job, difficulties in their mothering, and the guilt that they have in not being that perfectly organized mom. And so we want to have these discussions because they're really important to have and to normalize and to make sure that women know that they are being heard too. So if you're new to this, I'm going to be uploading different lives. I've got some pre-recorded stuff that I'm going to be uploading as well. And we're going to be talking all about neurological differences, some of the strategies that work in school, but also, for the parents, because the more I can teach the parents, the more they are able to help their child. And this is a massive, massive game changer, because oftentimes you were not supported as a child. And so because you weren't supported, you're not really sure how to support your own child. And I get that, and we're going to help you with that. So please like, subscribe, get the notifications the next time I come on live. I would love to hear your questions and comments. I'm always open to doing new videos with any of the comments or questions that you have. So feel free to write them down or type them in and let me know what you want to see. Again, I'm Chris Brady, and I'm a neurodiversity consultant, and I work with clients who have symptoms or difficulties that exhibit as ADHD or autism or dyslexia and anxiety. And so those are the topics we're going to cover. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you very soon. Bye. Have a great day.